The wide receiver position is extremely deep in fantasy football, and to demonstrate that fact, I want to highlight one of my favorite best ball picks, Tyler Lockett. In his 6-year career, Tyler Lockett has only missed one game. He's played 95 out of a possible 96 regular season games. So he's extremely durable. And in his last 2 seasons, his average stat line is 121 targets, 91 receptions, 1,055 yards, and 9 touchdowns. In 16 games in 2020, his averages were 8.3 targets per game, that would have ranked as wide receiver 11, 6.3 receptions per game, that would have ranked as wide receiver 6, 65.9 yards per game would have only ranked as wide receiver 21, but 0.63 touchdowns per game ranks as wide receiver 7. His catch percentage is pretty high, 75.8%. That's 8th best in the league among all wide receivers. His yards per reception, though, are pretty low, only 10.5 yards per reception, and that would have ranked as 67th in the league among wide receivers. So very low mark there, but it doesn't really matter. 13.5 half PPR points per game, that would have ranked as wide receiver 12 on a per game basis last season. So even though his yards per reception is one of the lowest in the league, it's pretty irrelevant because of his rapport with Russell Wilson. He's pretty much a guarantee to get 6 catches every single game. Now look, the team does add Gerald Everett this offseason, so there is a little bit of reason to be concerned that maybe his targets will go down for Tyler Lockett. But Gerald Everett's going to help keep them on the field and prolong drives and open up more scoring opportunities. So if it affects Tyler Lockett at all, it's barely going to change anything, in my opinion. I understand that everyone's really high on DK Metcalf, but in order to justify his ranking as wide receiver 5, they've diminished Tyler Lockett a little bit too much, in my opinion. He's fallen all the way to the 5th round in drafts, and his current ADP is wide receiver 21, going 54th overall. And it's a testament to how deep the wide receiver position really is that you can get a player as talented and as effective as Tyler Lockett in the late 5th round. His 13.5 half PPR points per game was more than Julio Jones, Allen Robinson, Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and both Rams receivers as well. I bring that list up because each of those receivers are being drafted above Tyler Lockett, and in some cases, a full 2 rounds earlier. I personally think that he's just as valuable as a player like Julio Jones in the draft this year, and he's more reliable to play and finish every single game. Considering his yards per game ranked as wide receiver 21, to draft him as wide receiver 21 is really drafting him at his floor. The risk at that price is already baked in, and it's so much more likely that he finishes higher than that ranking than goes any lower than it. At least that's how I feel. He does have high variance week to week, and there is a bit of volatility with Tyler Lockett, and that's the only reason I'm uncomfortable drafting him as my wide receiver 1 on my roster. But to get him as a wide receiver 2 in almost the 6th round is a steal, and I think you should feel very confident if you get him that late. He's one of my favorite picks that I target in the 5th round, especially in best ball drafts.